if I were put in charge of the American education system, what would I do? Well, in our film IndoctriNation, we have Samuel Blumenfeld, and he says this about the public schools. He says the public schools have become a criminal enterprise. We also interviewed John Taylor Gatto, and he said having strangers work on your child's mind is a mad idea. What we are trying to say in the movie IndoctriNation is that the public school system is an institution that has to be destroyed. You have to get rid of it, that it can't be fixed. We have the analogy of the big yellow bus traveling along and it breaks down. What do? Do you patch it up and try and keep it going, or do you get rid of it? We argue that it needs to be destroyed. You need to get rid of the public school system, both the federal involvement in education, but also at the local level as well. There shouldn't be the power to tax, to pay for other people's education. That should be completely privatized and independent from the control of government.
Wow, the late, great Sam Blumenfeld. I know you're going to talk about him in a second. Wonderful guy. Public schools have become a criminal enterprise. If you've watched the first hour and 15 minutes of this presentation, how do you conclude it's not criminal, right? And tell us a little bit about Sam and your book, and comment, if you will, on his comment about the criminalization of how the public schools have become a criminal enterprise.
Sure. Well, it was a great honor and a privilege to work with Sam. In the last years of his life, he passed away a couple of years ago, right after the book came out, actually. But it was so great to work with him. He knew so much. He spent 50 years researching all this, going into the university archives, into the correspondence, and digging out the truth about all this. And I support his conclusion 100%. That's why we called our book Crimes of the Educators, how utopians are using government schools to destroy America's children. And I realize, when you hear that title for a book in isolation and you haven't seen the evidence, you think, wow, that's really extreme. That might be bad, and I know we're not having good education, but criminal. But what we do in the book is, we provide massive amounts of evidence, huge amounts of documentation, a lot of it from primary sources, right? Going straight to the horse's mouth, John Dewey, showing that the school system is doing exactly what it was designed to do: dumbing down the children, indoctrinating the children, giving them reading disabilities, using methods to teach reading that were exposed as quackery, literally in the 1840s, and then again in the 1850s by Rudolf Flesch, then again in the 1970s by Sam Blumenfeld with the New Illiterates. I mean, the way they teach reading flies in the face of logic, right? They have the kids memorizing words. And it goes back to one of the fundamental goals of John Dewey. He did not want individualistic kids. He did not want kids who could read their Bible, who could read their Constitution and their Declaration of Independence. And if you go back to early American history, you realize that was the point of education. I mean, if you look at the very first education laws that we had in what is today the United States, you can go back, 1647, look in Massachusetts Bay Colony, the old Deluder Satan Act, right? The towns were supposed to establish a school, and the idea was the kids need to learn how to read so that they can read their Bible, so that they're not ignorant, and so that Satan can't deceive them. So that was the purpose of school. You open up your Bible and you read, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So now we have these schools that deny even the existence of God, right? You can't even say what it says in the Declaration of Independence, that the Creator made us and gave us rights. And the founder said that was self-evident. That's not religion. The Supreme Court may say it's religion, but that's self-evident. That was self-evident to the people who founded this country. And we see the fruits now. Our society's falling apart. Our government's out of control. 20 trillion in debt, 200 trillion in unfunded liabilities, abortions and drugs and crime and gangs, and it's getting worse, right? This stuff is all snowballing, and there's no end in sight. And Sam and I both attribute the bulk of these problems to what has happened in the educational system, starting with the kindergartens and the elementary schools. And I agree with Colin Gunn. We need radical solutions here. And the system is such that it cannot be reformed, right? It was designed to do what it's doing. It grew from a poison seed, so of course it's producing poison fruit. We need to rip it out from the roots and start again. And we need to build it on a proper foundation.
It is amazing when you think about the role of syndicates, right? The mob, the mafia, this or that gang. Is it fair to say, and Colin's saying it, you're saying it, everything we've seen here for an hour and a half seems to reinforce this, that what this educational establishment has become is the largest underground, above ground syndicate in maybe the history of Western culture, right? This is a huge, across-the-board organization designed to make education less effective, to make it less individualistic, to make it more conformist, less efficient, to make it more political, to make it serve the ends of very narrow political ends of a very small group of people. How do you escape that conclusion? And if it's true, and I want you to reflect on that, but move to the second quote that Colin Gunn brought up from John Taylor Gatto, right? That allowing public strangers to educate your kids almost exclusively is madness.
It is, and I think there's been a very concerted effort, a deliberate policy, I would say, to get both of the parents in the workforce. And part of the reason for that is because that allows the utopians, the John Deweys of the world and his disciples, to grab the minds of the kids, to monopolize the minds of the kids. And I agree entirely with John Taylor Gatto, too. Actually, he's one of the people that we dedicated the book to. He understands what happened. He was one of the teachers of the year multiple times in New York. And what he did was completely the opposite of what the education establishment wants. He gave the kids freedom. He told them, use your brains, think about things, do your own research. So he took a totally different approach than the dumbing down that goes on in the schools. And it was very effective. And so, eventually he couldn't participate in the system anymore. But he's right on the money. God gave parents the responsibility over the children. You are primarily responsible for the upbringing of your children. Handing them over to Caesar to be educated is bound to result in disaster. And to get back for one more minute to the criminal enterprise aspect of it, what other business, what other industry could you tell people, hey, I'm going to sell you this product and it's going to do X? And then, in this case, they're telling us, hey, give us your kids, give us your tax money, and we're going to educate the kids for you. And then they do the opposite. Rather than educate, they give the kids reading disabilities. They dumb down the kids. They indoctrinate the kids. You could not do that in any other field, or you would be taken to court for fraud, for extortion, for misleading advertising. And yet this is happening systematically. We're spending $1 trillion on this craziness across the country. And if you look at the government's own numbers, it's perfectly clear that this is a criminal syndicate. In Washington, D.C., the State Education Agency reports that 2/3 of Washington, D.C. residents over the age of 15 are functionally illiterate. I mean, I can train a 4-year-old to read in a matter of months with almost no effort, almost no money. You're telling me these schools with $250,000 over the kids' K through 12 education, they can't read? Obviously, it's more than just kind of a national accident. Oops, how did that happen? This is deliberate, this is systematic, and it needs to be exposed. It's criminal.
There is a grave, grave lesson here for parents. When Jesus Christ said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, he meant pay your taxes and follow the laws as long as they were reasonable. Never did Jesus Christ say, send your kids to Caesar. I mean, it's absolutely inconceivable. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, suffer the children to come to me, right? You pay, if the coin has got Caesar's head on it, you give it back to Caesar. It's garbage, but you bring the kids to me, right? This criminal syndicate now, right? There's no other way to label this. It's working at odds with education. It is working at odds with family values. It is adamantly opposing biblical principles. There is no win-win here. There is no way of surviving this. There's no way you can accommodate to this system in the long run and keep your kids safe. It's just not possible. If you enjoyed this video and all of our videos, please consider a tax-deductible donation so we can keep the whole thing free for you. I'm Dr. Duke. Thanks for watching.